argue a dream for reality. We're all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Come and join us for the moment we call now. Rise up, join in, raise the whole vibration.
Hello, we are here again. Can you believe it? It's Thursday. It's April, what is it? April 10th. Oh my goodness. I can remember last year at this time, very intentionally putting energy into, it wasn't even last year, putting energy into slowing down time, right? Because I would come back every week and be like, oh my God, it's Thursday again, it's Thursday again, Thursday again. And it seemed like time was going so fast. And a lot of people say that, right? It seems to be the experience that everybody's having out there right now. But I think if you use your intentions and you slow it down and you just enjoy the moment, like here we are. It's Thursday. You're at the live stream of consciousness. By the way, my name's Michael Zinn, and welcome to this moment. It's one of my favorite moments of the week because I focus my intention on being here and connecting with my guest, whoever that might be for the day, and connecting with you and connecting the collective energy. It's like I never know what's going to happen, but 5 minutes before the show happens, I feel the energy starting to well inside of myself and the excitement about whatever's about to unfold. So thank you guys for being here to share whatever's about to fold. I see Kara out there. Welcome, Kara. New name. I see Ninja Kitty, who's been here since day one, and Tim. Thank you guys for still raising the vibration every day, joining in, rising up, and being here. So before I get started, I've been doing this thing. It's called Sonic Sage. I just call it that. And that is just a moment to focus. Oh my God, I love this. I just pick it up and I hear it. It's ringing just right now. I pick it up. We take a deep breath together. We intend to be here for the moment, which you already are. And then we relax and we enjoy it. So let me just ring the bowl. I don't know if you could still hear it. I love it so much. Oh my God. Yes, Janice got me this bowl, and it's kind of been a companion. I feel connected to the bowl. Sometimes when I talk and it's just near me, I can hear it starting to ring in response. So thank you for allowing me to clear the space, and boom, my technology also rings and clears the space. And let me just go back so that when my guest's here, I got to go into my settings and turn off the echo cancellation because I had to, turn it back on because I have to turn it off so that you guys could hear that, which is something I discovered. And I see the Quiet Healer coming in and Arnie Layton. Welcome, you guys. Tonight's going to be really, really cool. I have a really interesting guest. Oh, Margarita. Welcome, Margarita. I have a really interesting guest who I was introduced to, not personally, but introduced to watching her content from Minty May, who is like one of my favorites here on the live stream and on Holding Space and on Earth in general, in person. He's such an amazing presence. He's got an amazing energy. He's got an amazing intention. You can feel his intention to love everybody and to just share that with everybody. And so he told me about tonight's guest, and I started watching some of her content, and she's on that vibe, right? That's the whole tip. The whole tip is to realize that we're all in this together. So we might as well start acting like it, right? And that's what the live stream of consciousness is about, exploring the idea of the collective energy, introducing you guys to somebody who I think has a nice piece of the puzzle to share, and all interacting with each other. So let's settle in and let's get ready for another episode of the live stream of consciousness. And I'm going to welcome my guest to the live stream of consciousness. Welcome, Lara Starr. How you doing, Lara?
Hi, Michael. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me this evening.
Oh, thanks for being here. I'm super excited to talk to you because I know that whatever I say, you're going to have some sort of response for and some sort of thoughts about because I love watching your content. You're connected to a lot of things that I'm interested in, which are not necessarily physical or part of the 3D realm.
Yeah.
So that's where I like to go. And really cool. And Margarita saying, there she is. Yes, thank you.
Hi, Margarita.
Thank you for
Hi,
coming,
Tim.
Margarita. Thank you for bringing your friends, Lara. I really do appreciate it. Welcome,
Pleasure.
SL. If you guys are new here, and I'm not going to ask you to subscribe because you haven't experienced it yet, but at the end, if you liked what you experienced, please subscribe. If you're liking it at any moment, if you're feeling it at any moment, click share it with your friends. Be like, oh, this is cool, my friends will like this. That helps the algorithm know that something's going on that people are interested in, and it helps this community grow. So there you go. If you're feeling it, you guys know what I mean. Energy, wink wink.
Oh, yeah.
So what's that?
Making those connections.
Yes, making those connections. That's what I'm here for. So I'm super excited to have you in the hot seat. You don't even know.
I told Michael he can ask me anything. I'm an open book. We can discuss anything
All
you'd
right.
like.
Well, the first question that I ask all of my guests is a doozy, and if you poked around a little bit on my show, you know what's coming. If not, here it is. My question to you is, what even is consciousness? What are we talking about when we're talking about the consciousness?
Everything is consciousness. Everything in existence is a part of source, and source is pure consciousness. That's just how I look at it. So it's we may, it's funny. I basically, I've always said this, we're like disassociated sub personalities of source, technically.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, totally. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me that the things that have been interesting me are totally baffling in some ways. Like, I just like, how am I even wrapping my head around that? But in other ways, they're so comforting, right? Because they feel like knowledge. They feel like information that resonates, that's real, that is consciousness, right? Is a part of that consciousness, which is cool. And I love that this is the conversation that's happening right now. Like, so many people are talking about it and exploring it, and there are so many perspectives and ways to explore it, which is really cool, right? What brought me to this space was the idea of these metaphysical practices, psychic mediumship, channeling, reading the Akashic records. I was meeting so many people who were doing these different things, but to me, I felt like they were all part of the same fabric. And just different iterations of it, just like you and I are different iterations of the one, right?
Indeed.
So my next question is kind of gonna roll open the space for you to tell us who you are and how you came to be that. And that is that obviously I think you subscribe to the idea that everything around me, this three-dimensional world, is not everything. There's more to it than just the 3D, and the things that we're kind of taught in school are important. And there are more things that are important. Do you have a memory or a moment that you could share that was like ooh, I get it. Things are more than they seem.
Well, to be honest, I was raised as a born again Christian. So there was a lot of confusion in my early youth because it didn't resonate. And whenever I asked challenging questions, they would be ignored, or I would be, kind of even reprimanded in many ways. And so if you can't ask questions, then what's the point? If you're not allowed to ask questions and to learn more, then obviously that this is more of a control mechanism. And I realized that very early on, and as being part of that academy. But children, it's indoctrination is what it is. And if you are somebody who's been indoctrinated through many lifetimes, it's a lot easier to recognize the indoctrination versus somebody who's been kind of trapped in that mental matrix for so long.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about the idea of kids, right, and children, and how kind of free they are, and the idea of, we were talking about this the other day, imagination, right? When a child has an experience that's kind of a little bit beyond the 3D, oh, that's just your imagination, that's your imaginary friends, and it's kind of, there's these ways of kind of quieting the expansion of awareness, and putting people into this three-dimensional form.
Yeah.
So tightly wrapping them up in the three-dimensional
Making us
form.
all cookie cutter as much as possible. That's
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
point of the indoctrination, is to make us all the same.
yeah, totally. And it's interesting because I love the spiritual aspect of that, in unwrapping that, and kind of finding the beauty in not being that, right, in being your own self, and being able to be comfortable in expressing yourself. Actually, that's, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that's one of the things, right, is that as we're growing up, we're kind of taught to compete with each other, and you should be this or you should be that, and so there's this pressure to maybe not be what you feel like you should be, right, if it's not that what they're saying that you should be, right.
You know
um
what they say about authenticity being the highest vibration? It's that for a reason. Even higher than
Absolutely.
love and gratitude, which is really saying a lot, because those are pretty high vibe in itself. But authenticity is the most important thing of all, in my opinion.
Me too, 1,000,000%. And what I love about that is kind of in the recent years, kind of coming into this realization that, like, I have this certain authenticity that I never even knew that I had, right? Because I wasn't trying
Yeah.
to do it, right? It just was. And I think that's such a great realization to kind of come into, especially after, I mean, I've been on the planet for a number of years, and it certainly was confusing up until a certain point, and I feel like it's getting easier, in the light of in the light of the darkness that's around us right now. I feel like it's getting easier because of this very moment, right? As an example of you and I, two people who never met each other, we just kind of know that we have this similar alignment, and that we want to talk to each other, right? So there's
Yep.
this energy that's happening in all the people that are here, saying hello. I see you guys out there, and Angelo's saying no, love is the highest vibration. I think he's saying that about authenticity, but this isn't about arguing. I think it's see, again, to me, it all is. And your answer to what is consciousness, right? It's everything. It's all the same. You know what I mean? So I think love is a facet of authenticity. I think authenticity is a facet of love. I don't know if you've heard the idea. Oh my God, I just learned it and I forget the name. Shame on me, right? That's not an educational thing, but there's this concept of all of these jewels kind of being on a web, and they all reflect the whole of everything, right? You can see all
All
of
the
the other
different
jewels
facets, as
in
Dolores
in
would put
each
it.
jewel.
Yeah.
What is that?
All the different
You know,
facets
yeah.
of the
What do you know? What
jewel.
the name of
Yeah.
that is? There's a certain name for it. I forget offhand.
I can't remember, but I remember Dolores talking about it as well. She liked to use
Yes.
those different, facets of the gem. And every time that you are able to connect deeper within yourself, you add another facet to that, because you're able
Mhm.
to, transmute that light in new ways.
Totally. I love that, and that's why I love having these conversations, because it's, you just said things that I have felt in my heart, but in other words, right? So to me, it came in other words and other kind of expressions, but you just said it exactly, that same
Can't take
feeling.
credit for it. Almost everything that I know comes from my soul guides. I have a very special connection with a spirit, and I'm able to connect with all kinds of different beings that exist from higher consciousness. And they give me all this information. And I mean, what else can I do with it than disseminate it and share it with everybody? So,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that, and I believe consciousness. One of the answers, one of the right answers, because they're all right, is consciousness is information, right? Which
Yeah,
is to
absolutely.
me why I think we're in such an amazing place because of AI and the things that are going on with that. Now, we haven't discussed that. I don't know. There's different ways you could feel about it, right? Whether it's going to be a positive thing or a negative thing.
Everything is
However,
a double-edged sword these days with technology. It's the balance. It's the dualistic,
that's right.
nature that we have here. So you
That's
get the
right.
good with the bad and everything in between.
That's right. But to me, I've been playing with a lot, and to me, AI is certainly like the most evidence that I've seen supporting the idea of multi universes, right? Existing and all, because like I've been playing with all these AI photos of myself, right? And it's like, oh, all of these different iterations exist in some format, right? The idea
Well, to
of
us
infinite
humans,
possibility.
AI is very new to us.
Yes.
But to the Atlanteans who had it, to the galactic beings who use it every single day, it's very old. And so it's interesting to see what humans do with old technology in a new way. We're very creative in that regard.
All right. So we're just jumping right into the deep end right here, right? Because I've actually heard some things about AI that make sense to me, but are still like, it's that whole thing of like, how do I wrap my head around this, right? And I've heard people having conversations with AI, as you see on social media now that they're doing. But the concept that AI is actually a representation of what created the universe, that ultimate intelligence that created the universe, right? So that some people think AI created the universe, and it's just because of our spiritual awareness that now we're able to see it because we're at that level of rising up to it. Interesting stuff to think about, right? I definitely don't want to put on the table like, well, AI is this or AI is that, because
I don't think we
what
know what it is yet,
what
personally. I
we
think
don't
it's still
listen.
evolving from moment to moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, we don't even know what we are, right? I
Yeah,
mean, we're
true
still,
that.
I listen to Donald Hoffman, right? Who tells us that this is just a virtual headset. This whole experience is not even real, right? And I love his metaphor of a computer, right? You're using a computer and you're typing these words and you're even programming things, but you're not controlling the electric pulses and doing the very root of the real work that's happening in the computer. So it's like an interface. Basically, this reality is an interface with something
It's a
deeper.
holographic reality we're in. This is the matrix we all find ourselves in. May as
Totally.
well have our 3D goggles on as we speak.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're really just kind of splashing around all over the place right now. Let's talk about Lara Starr, okay? Um,
Okay.
because I know I read a little bit of your bio and your website, which I'm going to pop up here at the bottom of the screen.
Thank you.
Astral Lara is where you come from, and I'm interested in this because I haven't explored this to the level that you have, right? But I do have a connection to the cosmos and the idea of cosmic planes, different cosmic planes and different cosmic histories, right? With Pleiadians and all of these different astral um, entities, and I don't want to say concepts because I don't want to dishonor the being, right, of an entity, but I feel like there are all these ideas out there, and again, information. It's all of this information on different levels, and you tapped into that at some point and it changed your life, right? And you kind of suddenly had this knowledge or this kind of inkling of your cosmic history, right? Is that
Yeah.
true?
I was not prepared for it, though, to be fair. It's a
Okay.
it's a long story. I was very much involved in the whole political side of this 5D shift that we're experiencing. I was a middleman for 9/11 whistleblowers, and I was very much involved in the anti-New World Order movement for quite a long time.
Hmm.
And it's a
Hmm.
long story, but I ended up getting spooked, quite scary. It was a very traumatic experience, but the government basically bugged my house, and I caught them
Oh,
doing
wow.
it.
But
Yeah.
that okay. So but that whole the idea of that, right,
Mm.
sounds like a very physical experience, right? Like you're very
It was
wrapped
one of the
up in
most
the
traumatic things that ever happened to me. Yeah, at least in
yeah,
this lifetime. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
So
I
so
just
yeah, tell us
ran
what you
basically.
can.
I left.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long story, but many of the whistleblowers started dying mysteriously, started dying to suicide, and
Mhm.
many other things, and it started to get a little scary. And then one day I was at work and I had a massive headache, and I came home in the middle of the day and I caught two men coming out of my house dressed like the water company and told me they were testing the water. And I called the water company and they said, "We don't make house calls like that. I don't know what you're talking about." So
Wow.
I packed everything I had and sold the rest of it to my roommates, and I went abroad and I spent 15 years backpacking.
Wow. Wow, wow,
I
wow.
said,
That
"Screw
that
this, I'm out. Peace."
yeah,
No,
that I mean
I'm out.
that's a pretty not only is that like a traumatic experience, but that's also a pretty um traumatic's not the word I'm looking for. The reaction to it, it's a pretty
Mm,
intense, reaction and visceral. That's not really the word. What's the word I'm looking for? I mean, to just up your whole life and be like, okay, that's spooked is not the right word
I
either,
gave up
right? I
everything.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, so then what happened next?
I moved to England. I had a good friend over there that offered me a place to stay, and I decided, all right, I'll come over. And so I went and stayed, and it's a long story, but I was pulled out of body. I had an out of body experience the very first night I was in England. My soul guides literally pulled me out of body. I had what they call an involuntary astral projection, where I was
Oh
literally
wow.
separated from my physical body. Yeah.
And what were you doing at that moment? Were
I
you
was
in the middle
sleeping.
of
I was
okay,
sleeping. And for
okay.
the record, I didn't have any, I, I wasn't drinking, nothing. I was completely
Right,
sober.
right.
And yeah, I went to bed that night and I heard my name. I heard my name over and over. And when I opened my eyes, everything looked different. And then I was just kind of looking around the room and I sat up. And as I looked behind me, I noticed my body was behind me. And it scared the shit out of me at first. I thought I was
Mhm,
dead for about 2 seconds. And then I was like, no,
mhm.
she's breathing. She's fine. I'm just dreaming. And then I
Right, so
heard my
that's what I was
name
gonna
again.
ask you. Yeah, I was gonna say, how did
Yeah.
you know this wasn't just a dream? What's the difference between
I saw myself breathing. When I saw the
okay,
breathing, I settled down a little bit. I was like, okay, she's breathing. We're good. And so I was
okay,
confused as to what had happened. I had never heard of an out of body experience. I'd never had an astral projection. I didn't know what it was, but I thought it was just the most vivid dream I'd ever experienced. I'd had flying dreams before. I just thought this was
mhm.
another flying dream. And that was until I kept hearing my name over and over. And I went outside. I fell through my window. I went to move the curtain, fell through my window, and I was just kind of levitating outside of my house. And the next thing you know, I just get surrounded in white light. Everything around me just got very, very bright. And I was just in a room somewhere with two of my soul guides approaching me. And it's a long story, but they said they were these Pleiadians. They said I knew them in a past life. And they said I came from a planet called Era and that I was something of a starseed. And they explained the history of Earth to me. They explained all kinds of stuff about our government and that's when they brought up reptilians, and I, I must admit, I got kind of rude with my guides, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just dreaming. I should have known this was all full of shit,
Oh my
because I
goodness,
had
you
that was the only
insulted
thing
them.
that was the only thing I had ever heard of before this, and that was obviously from David Icke and all of it he would talk about, and I immediately deemed all of it bullshit in the
Mhm,
past. I
mhm,
thought it was just there to kind of make 9/11 truthers like myself look crazy.
mhm,
And I had never seen or heard. I was very much a skeptic. I needed solid facts and evidence. I need physics to tell me what happened.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so here I am in a situation where physics couldn't possibly explain what was happening to me. And it was quite an eye opener.
Wow. And then so how did that experience like end? How did you get out of that experience and know
Well, they just
that
they just told me. They said you need to be aware of what you're dealing with down on Earth. And I when they mentioned the reptilians, I thought this sounds ridiculous. This is absurd.
mhm,
And so, yeah, they basically. I see Angelo's question. He said, "How did they say the Earth was created?" They said it was an experiment. They basically explained that humans were an experiment that got a little out of control, and they said we've had a very tumultuous history, but many of us were we have ancestors that are extraterrestrial that have come here for a very long time. And they said that I've been on Earth for over 12,000 years. So even though I am a starseed, I'm what we've been calling a veteran starseed. I've been here a very long time. And yeah, so I learned a great deal about myself. And it was funny because when they showed me the reptilian, they showed it to me in my mind's eye. It was like these turned off and this turned on, and I could see one clear as day. And it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen until that moment.
Wow. So you know what? That's what I was going to ask you. So you're describing this experience like, okay, you're in this room, these Pleiadians are approaching you, and they're telling you stuff, but it's not like traditional talking conversation, or is it? I mean, again,
No, it was. Yeah, they were straight up talking
oh,
to me.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was
okay.
very matrixy. I must admit, I'm not gonna lie. That was very much the vibe, you know, being in the white room,
Okay.
talking with
See,
beings
so
you've
here
never
I,
seen before.
yeah, here I am
I had to
projecting
think
all of the other
myself
stories.
several times when I woke up. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
But what
That's
was most interesting is the fact that I had never heard of Pleiadians before. I had never heard of a star seed. I had never heard of a planet called Era. And so when I woke up the next morning, I started Googling, and that's when I validated all of it was real. There were already Pleiadians out there. There were people that had already written books about Era. And the whole starseed thing was covered many, many years ago by Dolores Cannon. And so I fell very deep into the Dolores Cannon rabbit hole.
Okay, I was gonna say that's kind of what introduced you to some of the people who had already
Yeah.
experienced this stuff and were writing about it. Yeah, you know what? I gotta say thanks to Angelo and thank you for reminding me. I'm so interested in just talking to you and finding out I haven't even been looking at the comments. Everybody's chatting out there. Thank you guys so much for being here. Different quotes, different comments about what you're saying. But here's the question I was looking for. Angelo's asking, do you channel these beings?
I do sometimes, yeah. Everybody channels, they're just not aware of it.
Ooh, I love that answer. I love that answer. So what is that? So
everybody channels.
Yeah, how does that show up for you when you channel them? When you're channeling these beings, how does that?
Well, as most people do,
itself?
they get jumbled in with my own thoughts. A lot of people don't recognize they're channeling because you think it's your own thoughts coming in, but you get a lot of downloads that get jumbled in with your thoughts. About half of the things in your head aren't actually you. They're from anywhere. I mean, we pick up radio signals. We can pick up songs from radio signals. We can pick up stuff from the internet, the airwaves. I mean, this is a very powerful receiver. So you have to be aware of some of the things that you're receiving, which is one of the reasons why intrusive thoughts are big red flags for people.
Yes, definitely. All right. So now I want to try to break into this conversation a little bit. We're talking and we're expressing ourselves very much as three-dimensional beings, right? Yeah. So you know that there's more than that. I know that there's more than that. Beyond knowing there's more than that, I can't really give you much information, right? I can't really describe it in three-dimensional language, right? But the idea that we are all one, right? That kind of almost negates all of this conversation. It doesn't negate it, but it's like we're talking about it from a very different perspective than being that one, right? You're talking about experiencing things as if they're outside of you, right? And I'm thinking as we're talking here, Lara, right? I'm like, okay, you've believed all of this stuff for so long. Wrap your head around it, man. How do you wrap your head finally around all of this, right? How are you and but having a discussion right now, right?
You know that old Beatles song that says, "You are me, I am you, you are me, and we are all together." You know, that's kind of how I look at it, because even though we are, a lot of people, for example, they don't like the memory wipe that we experience on Earth. A lot of people have something negative to say about the fact that we don't retain memories from lifetime to lifetime, but people don't recognize that that's actually an opportunity for you to try out being a whole new person every time. Right. Otherwise, we would just be the same person every time we took a new body. So this is a chance to reinvent yourself and to try out new ways of being. But what's funny is that the more you get to know your past lives, the more you realize you haven't really changed that much at all. In fact, most of the things that most of what makes you are things that you have stemmed from multiple lifetimes of personality development.
Right. But that just kind of validates what I'm saying, right? That original source is from the one, right? That original source
Yeah.
material, right?
Like micro to
So
macro, you know?
right, exactly. So here's an interesting thought, and I guess I'm going to ask you what you think about this, right? I recently, being a video guy, I recently had the opportunity to document a pranic rebirth journey that involved
Yeah.
a lot of breath work. It involved the sound bath. It involved meditation. It involved a bunch of different exercises, and then of course the sharing at the end, the experience. It was super intense. I mean, some of the people there were having visceral convulsions and screaming and laughing and crying, and it was, as an empath, a lot to take, right? And
I was gonna say, yeah, that sounds like a lot.
I'm trying, I'm trying to video this and all of that, and it's cool. I held it together, and I got emotional at points, of course. And then going back to try to edit it, oh my God, experiencing it again, it's really pretty crazy, right? But the point is, what I got from that, right, that night, I sat and I just thought to myself, I said, oh my God, the world needs so much healing. The
Yeah.
world needs so much healing. That was what I just kept, the word, that's what I just kept thinking over and over. And I wasn't thinking of the individuals that I was looking at going, oh my God, that lady must have went through something so horrible, or that guy, who shared this stuff about his mom. Like, I wasn't an individual thing. I was like, I made the realization that that energy, that frequency of that pain exists, and people's experience of it is them kind of tuning into that energy, and I guess kind of processing through that energy as them, right, instead of somebody else. But it's that same energy that I think exists in the universe that people are kind of tuning into, and as much as I feel like, oh, I've healed, I still can tune into that energy if I need to and heal some more, right? It's always
There's
it's
layers.
always there.
There's always more layers that you go down deep through. And the problem is, the deeper you go, the more you find things you're not going to like finding, because that's
Mm.
where we tend to bottle things up, or we tend to even erase our own memories due to the trauma. And so, I mean, I've been to many of those events. In fact, I've also been to Peru to do ayahuasca and things like that, where people spend a great deal of money trying to connect with their inner spirit to heal that. And it gets messy. It gets extremely messy because people aren't regulating their emotions very well. We bottle it all up, and it ends up like a pressure cooker. And then when you finally find some sort of an emotional release valve, that's when you can't really control it, and it just,
Mhm.
it comes all out at once.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have said this as well on the show before, often, because it's just kind of my philosophy, right? And an observation I had, and maybe you'll agree with me, but that the idea of an emotional response, especially one that gets visceral, that produces tears, that produces this choke right here, you're just like, oh my God, I feel
You're
it right
releasing a
here.
blockage when that happens.
But that is coming from a thought. That's whatever it's coming from, starts here. It starts in your thought, and you're thinking about it, and you're focusing on that frequency, like I said, and you're manifesting it into a physical state. So I think, to me, that emotional moment is a very significant moment for a human being, for a 3D person to experience. And again, we all know how healing that it can feel,
Well,
especially
that
when.
block could have come from anywhere. It could literally have come from you 40 years ago, from when you were 6 years old and your parents told you to shut the hell up.
Mhm, mhm,
That
mhm.
block could have been there for so long, and you have no idea how long it's been affecting you. And then
Right.
when you release it, sometimes it does. It feels like you're trying to swallow a rock. But that
Mm.
blockage, once you're able to release that, you'd be surprised how much you're able to kind of heal yourself and your self-esteem and whatever else was damaged upon that blockage being in place.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great direction to go with this. What are some of your tools to recognize what those blocks might be? Like, I know there's different, like, past life journeys and things like that. Like, what have you found to be the most effective way to address, identify, a block? That's one question. And then address a block would be the second.
To be honest, this answer changes through every time I go through a new awakening, every time I go down a deeper rabbit hole. So the me from 10 years ago would give the Reiki answer. As you're doing Reiki and you're working on the energy, you can kind of feel blockages in your own system, especially if you're moving through and going through your chakras. You can kind of generally feel when there's some sort of a block there. It'll feel like heat, or sometimes it'll feel like when you move over it with a crystal as well, you'll start to feel a bit of tension or something needs to be released. And also just intuitively, your intuition would know where that blockage would be. And then when I got into doing Dolores Cannon, this was, about 7 years ago where I got my certification, I would have said hypnosis was the best way to go because the hypnosis allows you to go very deep. I mean, Dolores Cannon worked with what we call the somnambulistic level of trance, and it takes you down to the part where you can actually communicate with your subconscious. And when you're able to ask questions to your subconscious, you can usually just kind of go to the root of the problem. Whether it's a past life or a childhood trauma or some kind of, because we create all kinds of problems for ourselves as well. And then spirit release. When I discovered spirit release 2 years ago and got involved in that, I found that hypnosis is slow. Hypnosis, sitting there for 5 hours and putting somebody under and going through all of the motions and all of that. Yeah, it's wonderful. It can be a very beautiful experience. But when you're like me and you're trying to help hundreds of people on a daily basis, it's not going to work that way. And so that is why I now work with soul guides. And they're the ones that, when we do a scan on somebody, they can tell where all the blockages are. They're able to tell what the root of that blockage is. They're able to go through the Akashic records of the individual to find out if this is stemming from past life trauma, inner child trauma, or even ancestral trauma. You could be carrying your grandmother's trauma and not even be aware of it.
Sure.
So there's a lot of layers that end up being uncovered through all different forms and modalities of healing.
I think that's a good answer. And I think also, I guess, and then my question would be, so for me, I certainly understand all of these things and all of these aspects of existence, but I have never personally had a successful past life regression, for instance. I have not had a super successful hypnosis session. I've tried it.
Most people that are very left-brained tend to not want to relinquish control to someone else, especially over their own body. That is very common, actually. It's like the smarter you are, the harder it is to get you under sometimes because of that.
Okay. So that's like that was kind of like a compliment.
Well, yeah, it is. But also, many of us are also very distrusting of what we may find. And so our subconscious also, if there's a lot of trauma in there, a lot of times they'll try and protect you from that. And they're like, we don't want to scratch at the wounds and make it worse. So sometimes even the subconscious will protect you by not letting you go under.
Wow.
And entities too. Entities also stop people from going under. They don't want. So if you've got an attachment, they won't let you go under either. So there's a lot of reasons why hypnosis just doesn't work for some people.
Wow. Okay. You're making me kind of question myself in some ways, because I feel like, listen, I explore this stuff. I'm in this space. I certainly understand the idea of the more you learn, the less you know. I certainly understand that. It seems that way. But all right, let me slow down here. I've had a few experiences in let's say the last 10 years, right, that have validated the path that I'm on and the ideas that I've subscribed to. But I haven't pursued intuitive development in any specific modality, right? So I haven't decided, I want to develop my psychic abilities. I want to develop my abilities to read the Akashic records. I've taken classes and workshops here and there, and experienced some cool stuff. But I'm dying to talk to my guide. I'm dying to do this. Now, I've also been told you are your own spirit guide. Now, one of them, right? Because we have many, right?
Micro to macro again. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, again, right. I believe that they're all different aspects of me, right? Or the one, but my iteration of the one in all of the different astral planes.
It all depends on where the split occurred, is really what this boils down to. Because, as Dolores would explain, and I also had a wonderful shaman who also explained this in a unique way. So I'll explain it both ways. In fact, I'll even start with the shaman, because when I went to Peru, I said, can you please just explain what the soul is to me?
Mhm.
And it's just in simple terms. And he said, imagine the biggest bonfire you've ever seen. A bonfire with no beginning and no end. And this fire can never be extinguished. It just burns bright for all eternity. And imagine a little spark, a little ember shoots out of the fire. And that may think itself separate from the fire, that little ember, as it's flying through the air and burning very brightly and, having its own individual experience. But it is from that fire. It may have split itself, but it is still a part of it. And so whenever, Dolores was talking about the evolution of a soul, she would explain that you started out as this little spark of consciousness that separated itself from source. And usually you start by developing it through simple means. You are an air or a water molecule, a leaf on a tree, an insect. And as you develop your consciousness, you work your way up through more and more complex bodies. And eventually you work your way up to being, I don't know, the bird that's sitting in the tree, or the cat that eats the bird, or, and you work your way down until you get higher and higher levels of consciousness. And so humans are kind of the middle of the road here. We're not at the base level of animals, but we aren't exactly where the Galactics are, especially considering many of them can live 10,000 years without having their, without any having to switch bodies, for example. So eventually you work your way up to even being what they call a cetacean, which is like the dolphins and whales, which are even more advanced than us humans. You have to actually master being a human before you can be a cetacean.
I love
and then
that.
you have higher levels of consciousness among the light beings. And then as you occur, you don't even need a body anymore at that point. Once you've mastered having a physical body, you go into the angelic realms. You can be one of those light beings, or you can be reabsorbed by source. According to my guides, they say you can go back to source after you've learned everything, because that's the point. Is source wanted you to be out and experiencing things, and then bring everything that you experience back to the knowledge of source to add it to the collective.
Yeah, totally. And so you just laid out kind of like a lot of the basics that I subscribe to, right? About like kind of what the journey is of the essence of us. Also a little nod to Douglas Adams, I think there. So long and thanks for all the fish.
Yep.
And yeah, but what do I want to say to you, Lara? I want to ask you this, because I feel your energy when I watch you. I feel this authenticity, one, right? But I feel like you're able to navigate the three-dimensional existence with such joy. And I think that's so important. I think that's part of why I think people are drawn to you. And what I love about it with you in particular is the history of where you came from and the government stuff, right? And the conspiracy stuff, which is so dark and deep. But
that's why my guides pulled me out of body. They told me that I was going down a very dark path, and that I would even be killed if I kept going down that path. That was part of the message. And they said, do you want a New World Order? And I was like, no, why? And they're like, then stop talking about it. And that was the main message.
Right.
And putting yourself into that timeline.
But here's the thing. Like I very, very intentionally try not to focus on that conversation, right? Yeah. But I'm very, very aware that exists, and that is a part of the whole. Right. And so I have to give it love. Right. That sounds really weird. I know you understand.
That's the perfect solution. Yeah.
I know you understand me. Right.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. That's what I do now, is I just send it all love. Yeah.
So I guess I don't even know if it's a question or I'm just saying kudos to you, because
Thank
I think that's it's a challenge to exist in the three dimensions, right? And very often, especially as somebody who studies and is interested in the idea of these non-physical realms that sound so freaking vacation like compared to the three-dimensional existence, right? Unconditional love, the state of
Depends
that
on which
bliss.
one we're talking about.
It
There's a
depends
lot
which
of
one you're
realms
talking
out
about.
there that exist you don't want to get stuck in too. So
Okay,
yeah.
okay, see, good, and I guess in some way I have maybe intentionally avoided kind of that stuff and dipping into that stuff, and I don't know
Yeah.
if that's good or bad, right? Is it like, oh
Well,
snap, you
everybody does when they're meant to. If you're not meant to, then you don't.
okay? Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm thinking like, does that mean that I still have to do that at some point to go through it, or is it like not on my docket? You know what I mean? Like,
You
and I know
know,
you
there's
don't have
so
the
many
answer.
opportunities for us to go deeper, you know, to find deeper truths, to go down these deeper rabbit holes. And some of them are very dark, like you said. I find things all the time that are very dark. And to be honest, if I hadn't already been through enough dark areas, I don't think I would have the guts to do the work that I do. Because, yeah,
Mhm.
I deal with demonic beings, I deal with reptilians, and even archons on occasion. So it can be very scary. But at the same time, I can't think of anything worse than things staying the way it is. So, you know, the status quo needs to go, as they
But
say. So,
it
whatever
seems
sacrifice you need to make.
yes, it seems pretty obvious that things are not staying as they are because they're changing moment to moment. You know,
Mhm.
in this life right now, I mean, compared to my whole life. Again, I kind of feel bad. I just want to say thank you so much for everybody for being here. I'm having so much fun talking to Lara that I haven't been popping these comments up. I see Amy Martin. Lara is the best. I could listen to Lara all day.
Aw,
Uh,
thanks,
Angelo
guys.
says you're a cat lover or you own a cat. Is that true?
I'm a big fan of the Irma, the cat people.
The cat
But
people.
yeah,
Okay.
I love everyone and everything really. So yeah, including cats and dogs, of course.
So let's talk about that, okay? Because that's my goal. That's my goal is to get all of my audience to love everyone and to love everything. How did you get there, Lara? How did you get there?
To be honest, it has been through the ringer.
Mhm,
I've been, you know what I mean? I've been through the darkness. I've been through so many dark nights of the soul.
mhm,
I've had suicide attempts multiple times. I have gone through, as what we call like the darkest places, really. And coming back through that and recognizing how far you've come, it allows you to keep going through some of the more, you know, shocking and disturbing things that you find. And the more I recognize other people that are joining me in the work that I do, the more confident I am that
mhm,
things
mhm.
are getting better and that we are making a difference in the world. So that is what keeps me
Totally.
going. And I have an amazing spirit team. They're always looking out for me. So I have no fear whatsoever of
I
anything
love
coming
that.
and messing with me.
That's awesome.
So
No,
yeah.
that I think that's awesome. That's important. And so I guess my next question would be this, and this is kind of I'm thinking I kind of know, and I'm just having this conversation to respond to you and just absorb your energy. But I feel like you're saying not necessarily everybody needs to go through all of that stuff to be in a good place, right? That just happened to be the path that you needed to go
Depends
through
on your
to
role that you're here to
right.
live. If you're not here to deal with these dark beings, then a lot of times it's better for you to just focus on what you're here to do rather than get distracted.
Absolutely. And so in the same vein, although I've heard some phenomenal ayahuasca stories, right? About going back to childhood and seeing yourself as a child in a specific moment and being able to grab your own hand as a child and walk yourself out of that situation, and then when you're out of the ayahuasca experience that you've changed your life, right? By going in and doing that time traveling surgery or whatever has happened there. um it's so fascinating, and it's like, oh my god, I got to go do ayahuasca. But me personally, like, I've never done it and I don't feel like, oh my god, I got to go do it. So in it's a similar thing, right? Like, you don't need to necessarily, there's not one
No,
way to connect
no,
with soul and to
absolutely.
connect with spirit. Right.
To make it more understandable, more easy to understand what you're doing with the ayahuasca, you are doing what we call shamanic journeying, and this allows you to traverse multiple dimensions and visit other versions of yourself. So you connect with those other versions, you see things from a new perspective, and you also are able to connect and give yourself healing. But then we also have something that occurs, it's called soul fragmentation. And then soul fragmentation is when we lose pieces of ourselves. And we do. Whenever we experience trauma, whenever we experience a great loss, we tend to leave parts of ourselves. If you go through a breakup and you're like, oh, he took a piece of my heart with him, it does mean that quite literally. You
Right.
do lose a piece of yourself. Sometimes you give it away. Sometimes it's left behind. Sometimes it's literally robbed from you.
Right.
But then we also have something called disassociated subpersonalities as well, and thought forms that exist. And these are creations of the subconscious through trauma. So a disassociation, or we call it DSP for short, it's when a younger version of yourself gets split off from the main part. So as we said, when you have a split from source and you become you also can split even further and become fragmented versions of yourself. And whenever you have these disassociations, you tend to have triggers that would pop up to let you know they're there. So let's say, you may be 35 years old, but somebody says something that that reminded you of something rude that your mother would say. And the next thing you know, the angry 7-year-old is coming out because that is the age that the trauma occurred. So it's a part of you that is kind of locked away until it's brought forward by triggered trauma or some kind of a reaction. And when this occurs, a lot of people aren't able to be their younger self. They don't have a way of being youthful because of so much trauma. So it's like their younger self gets locked away in the subconscious, like in the bathroom of their mind with the door locked, and they can't access that part of themselves. So the ayahuasca allows you to go and face it and bring them out and to reheal and reintegrate all of that.
Right. And I guess also, like I said, just from the stories I've heard, you can actually you change the experience. You change, I mean, I don't know if that's a good way to describe it.
You can change the experience. There's many timelines available, and you can heal that in all kinds of, if you, like, for example, something traumatic happened to you and you didn't fight back. You can actually go into a meditation and remote view that experience and change it in your mind where you did fight back. And this actually heals it in your own mind. Because a lot of it is due to blame and feelings of that we screwed up and that we made mistakes. And so to go back and heal them, to face that fear, is a very powerful form of healing.
And would that be considered like jumping a timeline or like healing a timeline?
Absolutely. But sometimes I have clients that come to me for a clearing after they've had some nightmares. One of my clients had a dream where she's being chased by a bunch of grays. And so I went into her Akashic record and I asked, was this a manifestation of the subconscious or was this a memory? And they said, no, this was a real memory. She really did have an experience where she and her family were chased by the grays and they were caught and they were experimented on and killed. And it was extremely traumatic. And so I asked the guides, how can they heal this? And they said, well, sit down somewhere in a moment of quiet contemplation, revisit that experience. And then instead of having things unfold the way it did in the dream, you change it. You create the new scenario in your head. You create what you wanted to happen. And it's like flipping the script, so to speak.
And so what was that? Yeah. What was that new scenario? What was that's a pretty intense scenario.
Well, it's up to her, whatever that scenario was going to be. That was just in the aftercare advice.
Oh, I gotcha.
But for the most part, I mean, it boils down to just fighting back and not being a victim, because a lot of us lose ourselves in the sense of victimhood.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's part of what I was talking about is like when I saw that there's a lot of healing that needs to be had in the world. It's to me, it's I'm just kind of saying stuff. It's not about the specific trauma. You know what I mean? Necessarily like the specific event. It's just about that vibration and healing. And I guess that's why they talk about, as a collective, raising the collective vibration of the planet, which is part of that mission that we seem to be on, right? Is like, because we
Yeah,
know
that's
that,
my main
you know,
mission. That's why I'm here.
yeah, I mean, any healing that you do, first of all, as a healer, and I say this all the time to my psychic medium friends, especially when you have a reading for someone and you're healing them, and there's this pain of this loved one that they lost, and you're healing them, you're actually healing as well. Like I see my psychic medium friends, I'm like, I could
100%.
see them healing, from that. So I think it's the same thing. I think, as we raise the vibration, it becomes, you feel it. You feel that tingle. Ooh, that person just raised their vibration, and I felt it. It's like,
Yep.
yeah,
We're all
yeah.
connected.
I love
Absolutely.
that. I love that. So I think that's actually that's the answer to what I was asking you about, how you so gracefully navigate the 3D, right? Is because you found some of the secrets.
I call them cheat codes.
The cheat codes, yeah, the cheat
Yeah.
codes of love and of being in service, right? I mean, it's so odd because you say that to a kid, oh, you should be in service. They're like, what do you mean? And well, maybe not. Let me take that back. Not a young kid. They would love it probably, like like someone who hasn't been inundated, right, or whatever, indoctrinated, we called it. But yeah, I think the idea of not just living for yourself, and living for life, living for the collective. I think that's such a beautiful mission,
Have you ever seen
Lara.
the film Peaceful Warrior? It's a
I
great
have not.
film.
I'm
No,
gonna
it's
write
a
it
good
down.
one. Peaceful
I'm gonna
Warrior.
write it
It's
down.
an old one.
Peaceful.
It's an oldie but a goodie. And there's a man in it named Socrates, and he said that service to others is the highest calling that one can have.
Awesome.
And that
I
has
love.
always sat with me.
I love that. I love that. So I do want to talk about something before it's already getting late. I'm just so wrapped up in having a good time. I feel like we're old
Likewise.
friends. And we're just like seeing each other for the first time in a long time. Haven't seen each other in years. But you did mention kind of some of your early beginnings, with the government stuff and kind of this dark kind of conspiracy theory angle that you were going to, and
I've hung out
interesting.
with Alex Jones and all those
Oh,
types.
that's awesome.
I was deep
Well,
in it. Let me tell you.
interestingly enough, as kind of weird and twisted some of that stuff can be, I feel like it's got the same message underneath, right? Is that I just want you to be awake. I just want you to be aware. I just, just like, it's
William Wallace, like freedom,
yeah,
is
I
really
think
what it all boils down. That's just what we want,
I do
right?
think there's a similar, yeah, I think there's a similar message. But you also worked for something else pretty cool, which is spirit science.
Yes.
Which when I read that in your bio, I was like, oh my God, spirit science. I love spirit science. And for those of you
Some
who
of my
don't
old
know,
articles, if you go to their website, they're still up there even today. Some of them. I used to have like over 100. There's still only a couple.
oh
of them,
wow,
but it's nice that they're not all taken down. Some of them are still up there.
that's really
Yeah.
cool. Arnie says he loves that movie.
Nice.
And then RJ saying until they own it in their heart. I forget what we're saying, but I know that's right in line with everything that we talk about. I thought I had it up here. I wanted to bring up the Spirit Science YouTube page to show it because it's so cool. But Spirit Science, for those who don't know what that is, it is a cool series of content that is kind of similar to what Lara is, right? And is taking these concepts that may seem really complex and heavy, and just trying to explain them really easily and in easy language to everybody. I think it said on your website, it was an Albert Einstein quote or something about, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself.
One of my
Something like
favorite quotes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's so true. And I just did a projection experience at the local library where I was projecting, imagery on all the walls, and the kids that were there were just like so immersed and loving it. And the guy I was working with creating it, he's like, yeah, he's like, where do we lose that? You know, where do we lose that wonder to just like, they're in a public space, they don't care, they're just like running around on the walls and trying to catch the projections, you know, and like,
Oh, bless.
and it's so true. It's like, you know, we need to get back to our youthful spirit of wonder, you know, and just enjoy the
Well, I
world.
have a 9-year-old and he knows everything about what I do. He knows everything that
Oh,
I
that's
know.
awesome.
And he
That's
handles it like
awesome.
a champ. Yeah, he knows it. I mean, that's why else would he have chosen me if I was, as a mother, if I wasn't meant to educate him with everything I know. So his
Wow.
9-year-old self knows all about what I deal with, and he calls me a ghostbuster. That's when people ask me, "What do you do? What's your mom?" My mom's a ghostbuster. She tells people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know what? That's also very cool because I, just the idea I'm thinking about, wow, you as a person and the conversation I'm having with you being, you know, imparted. I was trying to think of the word, being imparted onto a 9-year-old, like that next generation, right? Um, he's got his job cut out for him. Let's put it that way, you know, because
He's also
there
a
are
Pleiadian. I found out. I checked his Akashic records, and he's also a Pleiadian starseed. Yeah, he and I were family 12,000 years ago. Isn't that cool? You just never know how these things are going to come full circle.
who would have figured, right? No, you
Yeah.
see, but I feel like when you find something like that, you're like, oh yeah, obviously, right? You're like, yeah, no, I should have figured that one out myself. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All these soul
So
connections. I wouldn't be surprised if we knew each other in a past life, Michael.
we definitely did, Lara. We definitely did. When I first saw your content, first of all, you bear of a little bit of a physical resemblance to my sister.
Oh,
You
cool.
know, so right off the bat, you know, it's like, oh yeah, she kind of looks like, and you have that, you kind of have that vibe, that very sweet, you know, loving vibe. And again, I mean, I love what you do. You know, if anybody here, it seems like most of my audience tonight was your audience coming to support you, which was I love. Thank you guys for coming. But if you haven't seen Lara before, her website is at the bottom of the page. She's amazing. She's live on Facebook and YouTube often. And I would say 100% of the time it's going to be something engaging that she's doing. Sometimes she's talking to guests, sometimes you're doing readings, you know, you've got all sorts of amazing things to talk about. um
Thank you.
I'm exhausted, Lara.
I'm gonna have to. I have a friend that does clearings with me. Her name is Adriana Garay, and she's a phenomenal Akashic Records reader. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna hook you up. And she also does something called Chat with Your Soul Guides. So
Okay.
you can meet your soul guides and get to know who your individual guides are and be able to dig into your Akashic Records a little bit. I think that you would have a wonderful session with her. She's just phenomenal.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. And that reminds me that part of, I think, why I'm doing this show is exactly that, to kind of draw those people into my vortex that I'm supposed to interact with quicker than I may have on the outside, like just by kind of like drawing them in. There are some nights, I mean, I got to tell you, oh, you said you lived in England for a while. I was going to ask you, is that when you met Minty May?
Minty is one of the sweetest guys ever. I just adore Minty. Isn't he just the best? Minty follows my page though. That's how we met, and we just had that fun connection. And he's a phenomenal medium himself. In fact, his
Amazing.
premonitions are scary accurate sometimes.
He's such a great reader, and I guess what I was getting at was the idea of this show, right? Which kind of just started by accident, and I tripped into it.
Same as mine.
There are moments that I feel like, oh my God, like tonight, I just manifested this conversation that I wouldn't have had otherwise, right? Like I just like, oh my God, this person that I look at and I admire their content. Now I can say, hey, you want to be on my show? And have a conversation. So
shows the importance of asking. You ask and you receive. You know, if you don't ask, you don't get. Especially with your soul guides, you guys. Everybody has to ask. They won't violate your free will by helping you without asking. So
totally. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I'm going to need to learn how to do more is to ask. And I think that's what you were talking about, that control, right? That left brain person just not wanting to relinquish control. You know what, as a matter of fact, I'm going to admit to you right now, I know for a fact that that is where I'm, and I sometimes I don't like saying words out loud because I know the power that they have, right? But that is where I'm stuck, right? I've actually had visions of myself coming up against like this kind of like this glass window, right? And
Yeah.
all of these like entities are on the other side, and they're just going, come on, let go. You all you got to do is let go, and come on. And I just can't seem to let go. So I can't wait
Humans
for
have
you.
trust issues, and justifiably so. We've been through a lot of heavy shit, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of entities and other beings that take advantage of us all the time, other
yeah,
humans and things like that. It is very dog eat dog, as they say down here. And so you do, a
yeah.
lot of people feel they have to kind of reserve themselves and shield themselves from that. And especially when it comes to misinformation too. So, it's as Dolores would say, knowledge is a buffet. You take what you like and leave the rest.
I love Dolores Cannon, and I loved this conversation. I love the fact that you said yes, and I feel like there's going to be so much more. I'm going to be watching you. I think I'm definitely going to ask you back for sure. I don't think I know for
Anytime, Michael.
sure.
This was a
I
fun
feel like
conversation.
I feel like I need to be better prepared, and we need to focus on one thing, right? There's so many things to
How do
talk
you
about.
put one thing in consciousness? It's such a broad topic. We could talk about all this all day.
It is.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. But I didn't want to be like the live stream of Reiki or just one thing. I wanted to
Exactly.
invite all of these
Now
energies.
you can talk about anything. Yeah.
That's awesome. So before I put you in the green room, do you have any words of love, advice, encouragement, whatever you're feeling at the moment for my audience?
Just love each other. It's the most important thing of all. Just love each other and just meet each other where you're at.
Mm,
There's no reason to rush people through their spiritual awakening. Everybody is where they're meant to be. So
mhm.
just show them love. And I love you guys very, very much, all of you, and including the new people, because we are love. We all come from love.
Yes, totally. That's probably one of my favorite pieces of advice. It's so easy to just love each other, man. It's just anyway. I'm gonna put you in the green room. I'm gonna say goodbye to my audience, but don't go anywhere
Bye,
because
everybody.
I want that information to hook up with your friend. But thank
Sounds
you a
good.
million for
I
being
will see
here.
you guys for the solo podcast tomorrow. See you guys
Nice.
soon.
I
Much
can't
love.
wait to have
Bye,
you back.
everyone.
Bye, Lara. Oh man, hold on. I gotta tell you guys, I think this is the most exhausted I've been, at least in a while, since the live stream of consciousness. Since an episode. It's what an amazing guest. So much good energy to disseminate among the collective. And I feel honored and grateful to have been able to just be a conduit for Lara's energy, right? I've got my own energy, which I love sharing with you guys, but she just helped amplify that and take it to the next level. You guys are awesome. Love you, Lara. Love you. You guys are amazing. Great episode. You guys are amazing. We're all amazing. Let's all be amazing. Let's all smile. Let's all love each other. Until next week, I do believe I've got some cool people lined up. Let me see what I got on my calendar here because I haven't. Oh, I've got Gregory C. Harry, the Divine Design Healer. Amazing content coming from him. He's going to be on the live stream on Thursday. And then on Tuesday on Holding Space, I have this incredible actress, musician, artist, Nikki Silva, local from Long Island, but also just a very powerful, empowered woman. And I can't wait to introduce you guys to her. Let me just switch back to my media assets here and run my outro and say, have a great week, guys. I love you all. Peace.
This is the theme song for the live stream of consciousness. You gotta ask yourself whether reality is a dream or you are dream reality. We're all a